We're live. Okay, cool. So we've got Claire, our secular Quranis. We've got Vincent, our gay. I don't know, what else are you get besides being gay, Vincent?
I'm a beyondist.
Beyondist. Wow, cool. Okay, and what we're talking about today is gender a social construct? And I thought my thumbnail that I spent all of maybe 5-10 minutes on um, was quite funny. It was like, okay, so is race a social construct? Because that's based on some sort of reality. Is gender or is gender a social construct? Because apparently that's probably based on something to do with sex, right? And then one of the guys in the thumbnail says, what is reality? If everything's just a social construct, what is reality? Because you could just call everything a social construct. You could say race is like, oh, like nobody really divides races exactly by that color or this color. It's in your mind. Everything is, even light, everything is in your mind. So everything could just be in your mind and you don't call it reality if you want. Um, so that's that. And then, but people aren't aware of so many other things. So, like, I'm not even going to say gender is not a social construct. In fact, I am going to say gender is a social construct because it was made up, a made up word. Okay, by people don't even know the history. By some guy called John Money, basically a sexual abuser who wanted to promote his he was one of the first people to basically come up with this idea that even if you're a man with male sexual organs, you can basically be a woman if you want, because it's all in your mind. Everything's just in your mind. There's no biological effect on your body that makes you behave in a certain way, right? No testosterone doesn't do anything apparently. So he was promoting his stuff, but he didn't want to call his operations sex mutilation surgery. So gender reassignment just sounded a lot better. And there's a lot more to it, but just in summary, I'm just going to say, of course, if your body is different, it's going to have an effect on your mind. If you believe nature is an amazing kind of find everything in nature is amazingly fine-tuned. So like a cat's body creates a has a different connection with a cat's mind. If it wasn't, there would be a problem. Like you put a human mind in a cat's body, it's not going to work, right? So you got different bodies, different sexual organs, and these are not simple things. These are incredibly complicated. Do you see robots reproducing new robots? That would be amazing, but that doesn't really happen so far, right? So you just assume technology in our bodies is incredibly complicated. So there's not going to be some misfit or randomness between our brains and everything. So in short, there is a very important effect of our biology, our hormones, absolutely everything that affects our minds. It's not just in our minds. We can't just feel like being something else. Um, and just to round it off, because I'm a Muslim and we're not just having an academic discussion, um, there are many consequences to relationships if they are not kept to the traditional values in terms of making money, in terms of long-lasting relationships. Is like just one stat is that what's it called? If you're a man, if you're a stay-at-home husband, let's say, you're 3 times more likely to get divorced. So there are many, many consequences we'll go into. Sorry for the long introduction. Anybody who wants to talk, just go for it, man. Disagree, agree, whatever you want.
Um, well, obviously, I'm very biologically oriented. I got my degree in math and science. um, obviously, look, well, this started by saying race is a social construct. It started there because if you're going to deny that genetics plays any part in your mental cognition or your mental state, if you're going to deny that, if you're going to deny that biological reality, which a lot of people, I'm sorry, Khalid, you're not white. A lot of your people are very much responsible for this because they wanted to come into white nations and say, we're equal and we're the same. There's no difference between us. Stop being racist, all this other kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of your own fault for coming in and brainwashing white people into believing that there's no differences between the races. Well, it's not that much of a big step further to go ahead and then say, well, there's no differences between the sexes because, you know, it's a bigger leap, but it's still in the same quadrant. And there obviously are differences between the sexes. We have hormone differences. We have brain structural differences. Our bodies operate differently. We're not going to be exactly the same. I think the question comes in, the only thing that is a social construct is how should men and women behave? Because we know that without enforced social constructs about how men and women behave, they don't behave in their traditional gender roles. Women become, they want to have their own jobs. What?
So if you were in the middle of in the middle of a forest, right? And they've done experiments like this, like putting men and women on islands. You've heard of those experiments? And then women just completely collapse without the men because they can't get together. They can't boss the other women around. They can't organize themselves to make the tents or whatever you call it. They don't. Yeah, everything just goes wrong. So it's not like these sex differences are important.
No, I said that I admitted that there are differences, but without extreme social control and pressure, people don't necessarily 100% conform to that. Like, you know, you have to kind of like, you know, force men to be men and you have to kind of force women to be women. Not always, not totally. Yes, women are more likely to be feminine.
Say that's kind of unfair situation, or like the way you're framing it? Because first of all, men have created this world without which men, you know, our comfortable technology-based world wouldn't exist. And because we know that's true because men are more into STEM, women are not, right? STEM as in technology, etc., and mathematics. So men create this safe world where it's relatively safe playground for men and women to do stuff. But I would say that's first of all. And then second of all, this whole world's going to fall apart, and it is falling apart already, when you don't obey those biological differences and our specialities as men and women doing different things.
Well, that's why I agree. Heterosexuals cannot live in freedom. I agree. I agree with Claire that if you want a heterosexual society and you want a high birth rate, then you have to get rid of adultery, you have to get rid of fornication, you have to instill gender roles, you have to force women to do their thing, you have to force men to do their thing, because once you give heterosexuals technology and birth control, they implode. Okay, like, and unless you have some kind of authoritarian type of system keeping them where they're supposed to be, then yes,
or they have moral values that make them say we should have babies, sort of thing, and like women should not go out to work because they can't take care of the kids and the family and have children and have sex because it's too tiring going out to work. So like, so they either have some sort of moral value system, like, you know, traditional or religious people do, and then they don't suffer from those problems.
It needs to be enforced. It would need to be enforced, because if you just say, hey, it's a good idea for women not to go to work, women are going to go to work. They're not going to listen.
Wouldn't you agree, like the ultra Orthodox Jews and let's say really traditional Muslims, they don't really suffer from these problems, but the more liberal Muslims and the liberal or Jews and maybe whatever Christians as well, they do suffer from the effects of the pill and stuff like that. So
yeah, well,
there's either the moral choice or enforce it by law.
I've always said, I've told Claire 1,000 times that this world is going to be a fucked up world until we invent the artificial womb, and then we don't need to worry about any of this. As soon as we can mass produce children in factories, then we won't have this problem. The problem that we have is heterosexuals, that it's too complicated and it takes too much intensive effort and misery to keep you in line and reproducing. If This is what, yeah, I say, some gay man out there, please invent the artificial womb and start reproducing as quickly as possible. And then we don't need these marriages. We don't need heterosexual marriages. We don't need women. We don't need any of this kind of stuff. We don't need whippings for adultery. We don't need whippings for fornication. We don't need any of that kind of stuff.
Okay, let's just say until that happens and the artificial wombs doesn't, because when you bring in technology, there's so many side effects that we don't realize. Like, okay, we've had so much, like the iPhone, for example, that made phones the new computer and it made life really easy. You've got a computer on the move. We've got so much more freedom, except for then we had so many side effects that people become detached from each other. Right, so we've got more this hyper connection, yet we're more lonely than ever. Right, so there are all sorts of side effects that we don't know about.
This is the other thing that people like you do. You romanticize the past so much. Like, first of all, in the past, yes, you didn't have phones, you didn't have all this other kind of stuff, and you were only, in ancient times, you could only really associate with people who were immediately around you, and you had no choice. And this is what Claire does too. She glorifies old people, not old people.
I'm not. I'm saying without.
Wait, let me finish. She glorifies ancient people, and she says they had so many children. Well, they didn't even have a choice. They had no birth control. Don't glorify people who didn't have a choice. Don't glorify people who hung out with their family because they had no other choice. The iPhone gives you a choice. You can talk to someone on the other side of the world who you like instead of going to your aunt's house. I mean, these people, don't glorify people who had no choices. They had no choices.
I agree.
And I don't know if they were any happier. When I was in college, all the brown kids, all they would do is complain about their relatives and how invasive they were and how demanding they were. And all the brown kids, all of them would just piss and moan about, oh my God, I can only hang out with my cousins and my aunts and my uncles and they're horrible. That's like the old world where you had no choice. And I don't think people were happier. Why are all those brown kids complaining? Why do all the Muslim kids complain about their families?
Oh, that's your experience, but that's not mine. But anyway,
well, it is. It's very common, and they would also. I wish I was white because white parents are like this, and white parents give freedom, and you're allowed to lock your door to your bedroom, and all this other kind of stuff. They would go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I agree that there are a lot of people who romanticize the past because they're not in the past, and it's just simplistic. What are you talking about? But I wasn't doing that. I was talking about people who live now. So I'm talking about ultra, religious people now. They're not suffering. So when I was talking about the iPhone, I've got a phone which is essentially my Android phone is based on the iPhone designed by Steve Jobs, right? And so I'm not against the technology. I'm saying you need a kind of morality, some sort of level of morality to use it in the correct balance, is what I'm saying. So all I'm just saying is we don't know the side effects of this artificial womb stuff, but let's leave that for a minute because it doesn't exist. We can't talk about stuff that doesn't properly exist. There's all these experiments, but they're nowhere near close, right? Being properly functional. So let's talk about what we have, how we can solve things right now, rather than potential technologies.
Well, yeah. Well, I've told Claire 100 times that yes, if this artificial womb is not invented, then fine, whip all the heterosexuals, whip them into submission. Like, you can't do it without it. You're beasts. You need to be whipped like bulls in order to behave properly. Otherwise, you can't keep your marriages together. You can't have kids. You can't do anything.
Okay, so there are people who manage without being whipped. There's a lot of
but that's under Sharia. Under Sharia, which you are promoting, fornicators and adulterers are whipped.
Sure. And the good thing about those laws, generally speaking, right, is that, like, including being a thief and stuff like that, because the punishments are so harsh, people just don't go near the punishments. You don't really see much whipping happening because people just don't want to be whipped in public, right? So it's such a deterrent that you don't actually have to implement the punishment anyway. I mean, there are
you have to implement sexual tyranny with heterosexuals. That's
unfortunately. No, I'm saying because the punishment is so scary and so embarrassing. Okay, people don't fall foul of the law in the first place, because it's like, I'm not doing that. But if you have soft laws like you have in the West a lot of the time, right, then people just break the laws because they think they can get away with it and all that kind of stuff, and the punishments aren't so bad for them anyway. So yeah, that's just okay.
Yeah, it's tyranny. Look, the heterosexual system is tyrannical. It has to be tyrannical. It has to be tyrannical. Otherwise, you die out. And that's unfortunate. And I'm saying, yes, that's the natural order. I agree that's the natural order. And I'm saying we need an unnatural order in order to rectify that. Leaving nature has helped us in so many ways. We have synthetic medicines that take care of diseases now. We have surgeries. We have all chemicals that allow us to clean things that we couldn't clean before, and all these different kinds of technologies that are not natural, that have advanced our life. And I agree, maybe they've made us more individualistic to the point that it's hard. Highly individualistic societies, yes, I think that people are less likely or have harder times socializing with each other and communicating with each other, because there's not an overlaying blanket of a thick culture that they're all part of. Like in America, we don't have an overlying blanket of a thick culture that we're all part of. Each state has its own culture. And then in America, each individual person is their own culture, is their own system. That's how we operate here. And that gives you lots of freedom. It might give you loneliness, but I think, why are people moving to the West? Why aren't people moving to Pakistan? Why aren't people moving to Lebanon in mass numbers? Why aren't white people saying, you know, I want to go live in Africa. I want to go live in India. I want to go live in a less individualistic society. All you people that come to the West.
I mean, by the way, you know where I am, right?
You're in Lebanon, but I know you're okay.
I'm in Jordan, but yeah.
White people from England don't migrate in mass numbers to Jordan.
That's true. They moved to, like, English people, a lot of them moved to Spain, where it's more social. So they kind of move halfway, but they don't go all the way to foreign countries. They go to Thailand and Indonesia and Bali, places like that. So,
but there's no mass immigration. There's no escape from the West. People don't escape from the West. And this is the thing that I don't like. All you people from these non-individualistic cultures, you want to come here because our individualism gave us so much. And then you come and say, we want to get rid of this individualism. Sure. That's what you want to do.
I mean, that's the important topic, right? But let's try to focus on the gender roles thing. So we're already agreeing a lot of stuff. Claire told me that, and you put it in your own words, effed up psychologist or something. Was that something similar to the whole John Money situation, who's like essentially invented gender, that the word gender, or he was trying to basically force kids to behave
not
differently?
Force. Don't say force. He was allowing them to behave differently if they wanted to. He didn't force anyone
he bullied
to do
them,
anything.
But anyway,
he didn't bully. Where does it say he bullied them? Where did these children come from that he bullied? So parents just brought their children to a clinic to be bullied into being girls when they were really boys?
So the kind of thing we're talking about is he stripped naked. Let's say he was doing a twin studies, for example, right? And the what's her name? Sorry, Claire's already posted the videos. Like, people can search it out for themselves. And by the way, in the description, I've given lots of references to where you can get these videos. But David Reimer, just one of the twins in this twin study, transgender twin study. David Reimer was a boy when he lost his penis, but through some surgical accident when he was a baby, and so the parents, who didn't know much at the time, I think it was the 1960s, saw this guy John Money on TV, and he looked legit, right? So they took him to their baby, actually one of the twins, and said, "What should we do?" And John Money said, "Make your son a girl, because it's all in the mind." So, and it wasn't working out, and he was having private sessions where he took the other twin, stripped them both naked, and put them in sex positions, and they both eventually killed themselves. So it's probably not the best experience for them. That's what I put it as that
Well,
way.
no, probably not. But I mean, you're taking this very bizarre, extreme example. I mean, I know that in America, a lot of times, if your child is born a hermaphrodite, the parents will choose which organ to remove for you. You know what I mean? If you're born with both of them.
Sure.
And I know it's not a
It's not quite the
thousand
same
times.
thing. This is a boy.
Okay, but I know, but it's all, I was about to say, it's not also 100% uncommon that if a child loses its penis at a very young age, that they will turn it into a vagina. I mean, that has happened in the past where the
essentially
parents.
chopped off. It didn't just drop off or something. But okay, but
No, it was accidentally. You said it was accidentally removed. You said his penis was accidentally removed.
Yeah, okay. Basically, it was a very poorly done circumcision. They had some sort of machine, and they put the machine on the wrong setting. I don't know the details. So when I had mine done, and all the people I know, they don't use a machine. They have a surgeon and a little ring, and this is a very simple operation. So
it's a barbaric practice. It's a barbaric practice.
Sure. Okay, fine. That's another thing, even though it's medically good in terms of being.
No, it's unique schmegma. Schmegma is good for you. All this research, schmegma is good for you. You don't get infections. You don't get any of this kind of stuff. Muslims and Jews throw this all the time. It's so medically good for you. It's barbaric. My question
is, because we're trying to focus on this topic, gender stuff, right? Did you have any sort of experience of messed up psychologists that you were mentioning just before we went on the stream?
Not on gender, on other things. It wasn't. Well, I didn't go through gender. I didn't go through gender training. I went through horrible.
Claire, what were you saying? His cousin or something like that?
No, it was she. No. I think she misunderstood. I went through psychological tormenting as a child under this fucking witch, but it wasn't about gender. It was about autism.
Oh yes, that's right. Okay.
It was about autism, and that's very heterosexual. Yeah, of course they were a bunch of heterosexuals that did that. A lot of this gender stuff goes back into the difference between the way heterosexuals and homosexuals behave. I mean, yeah, heterosexual is going to if they think that there's one thing off about their child, they're going to abuse it until they think they correct it. And, that's just the way they do it. That's the way that heterosexuals raise their children. If there's one little thing off, you have to, you want to find some way to torment the child, to destroy it. And then, and especially if you think it's something incurable like homosexuality, the parents want to destroy it so that it can be so that it grows up with problems. And then you can say, you have problems because you're gay, not because I destroyed you, but because you're gay.
Ah, I see. Claire, have you got any opinions on, I know you've been sharing lots of useful stuff in the live chat, but do you want to share some opinions?
No, I'm enjoying the conversation between you and Vincent. I have nothing to add.
I think I've agreed with you. I have agreed with you that there is a difference between genders. There's a difference between the genders, and should children be put in sexual positions and bullied into changing their gender? No, I would disagree with that, but I don't think that's what's happening 99.99999% of the time. I don't think that that's the situation. I think that some child feels they have gender confusion and then they go to a clinic. I don't think these clinics go out and bust down people's doors and be like, hey, your kid needs to be a fucking trans person. It just doesn't work like that.
Why doesn't it work though? Because there's a lot of financial incentive. I think
because nobody wants to force someone to have gender confusion.
No, why are you saying these things? Why wouldn't they? Because there's a lot of financial incentive. There's a lot
because there's also moral and ethical, and nobody
pounds or something for every transition.
It's the same thing. Why would you tell a straight child it has to be gay if you're not going to tell a gay child it has to be straight? If you're going to do what's good for the goose is good for the gander, don't go in and tell people what they have to be.
Nobody said that you think this whole transgender thing. Well, I think you realize that your body affects your mind and there's all this fine-tuned balance between the two, right? So I was assuming you would be against the transgender movement because that's essentially creating an imbalance. It's like saying, how can you have it both ways? I don't get it. You're saying that gender roles make sense because there's
I didn't say they make sense. I said they're natural, but I didn't say they make sense. I said they're natural.
Okay. Let me just see where our disagreement is then, because I thought you were agreeing with everything so far. Okay, do you agree men and women are different?
Yes.
Okay, do you agree, therefore, if men and women are different, just like in any workforce, right, you should have different roles? I think we agreed on that already, no?
It depends on it. It depends. It depends. Not always. It depends.
Sure. Okay. Do you agree that men are more involved in STEM fields? Does
Yes.
it Right, okay, which makes them more industrious. They've always been more industrious, just the whole brain way of thinking, right? They always try to create machines to make things more efficient, whatever. That doesn't make them a better human being, right? It's just they're good at being more efficient, and that just makes them better at making money. Like if you can make a like in the past, you'd have to make a physical machine, okay, like a train, and then you could use that train to harness the power of a million horses and transport tons of coal and make tons of money, right? Now people like me will just code something and I'll harness the power of 10,000 human brains to get, stuff done over the internet really quickly. And therefore men are still making more money that way, right? So my question is, does it make sense that, for example, men go to work and women do the tough job of raising families because they have babies, and when they have babies, have you heard of baby brain?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Right? Because it makes sense that when they have babies, and it's a very difficult role, their brain specialize. How do they do it? They just get their whole brain specialized in all sorts of different ways. They start making milk. They're doing all sorts of stuff, and they actually become more clumsy as well, right? Which makes them kind of anti-work direction sort of thing, which is beautiful, I think, because it
No,
stops
well,
women
no,
being
but
forced into work.
but the thing is that obviously, at least white women did not like their role, and everyone says, "Oh, but they were tempted." No, these women fought very hard to get out of that role. They're not happy there. I know it's natural. I'm not agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you that it's not unnatural, that it's not natural. It's natural, but what is natural makes them unhappy. Margaret Sanger
Right.
said the woman's problem is she is fertile. She cannot, it's like a curse upon her. And
No,
so,
but why, if people are so unhappy, if white women are so unhappy with the idea of having children, why are they so depressed when they don't have children?
they're depressed when they have them. Sure, this is the other thing. In modern, you take this thing, okay, in modern life, you can admit you're depressed. We have all different kinds of fields to detect depression. We talk about depression. 150 years ago, nobody would admit they were depressed. Nobody talked about depression. There were no psychologists. There were no psychiatrists. There was no field. You can't say that people 100 years ago were less depressed. You can't say that.
What about suicide rates? So you might not be able to express yourself, but you might just be able to kill yourself, and suicide rates are going up, especially
Well,
in
because
individuals.
it's more acceptable to kill yourself these days. It's not
Oh,
as
okay.
it's not
Mate, I
it's
mean,
not.
there is some truth in that, because in religious circles, you go to hell, or it's really bad. Or I think most religions tell you that you shouldn't commit suicide. So there's some truth
Yes,
in that as well.
yeah, and so if you don't believe that, yes, 100 years ago everyone was Christian and they thought that if they killed themselves they go to hell. People don't believe that anymore. So yes, more people are going to kill themselves. It doesn't mean more people are unhappy. It just means that the pressure not to kill yourself has been released. Like I want to legalize suicide. Of course, if you made a clinic that anyone could go in and kill themselves, suicide rates would skyrocket. I mean, yes, they would skyrocket. Not because people are more depressed, just because the service is available now. There was no service available, before. You couldn't go do that before. Now you can. It's
Yeah,
like the thing is,
great. Makes it easier.
the traditionalists like you always focus on people who had no choice. And you say, well, look how they were living when they had no choice. Well, but okay, give them a choice and they'll act just like us today. They had no
No, I
choice.
agree with you. So poorer people, it's not even in the past. Poorer people now, they have less choices, and they end up making, in some ways, better choices, because this is the argument I always make. It's really hard to be rich and happy because we're so dumb at making choices. So when we become rich, we get more choices and we make dumb choices. A really good example I always remember is in terms of not live streaming, like streaming videos and movies and stuff like that, right? Like Netflix and whatever, right? So like when we got more money, we go, okay, now what are we going to do? We're going to ignore everybody else around him because everybody's toxic, right? Because as soon as we have the opportunity to not talk to people, we don't talk to people, right? But then we're quite unaware of what really makes us happy, and we're quite unaware that we're actually social beings. So what we do is we're very short-sighted and go, you know what? That neighbor, that's annoying. That person who looked at me, that person's annoying. And generally, white people don't even talk to their parents or all that kind of stuff, the whole family, until it's Christmas, and then they really hate it, right? So what do? They close themselves off with their Netflix, and guess what happens? They're really depressed. Now, poorer people, they can't afford that, and guess what they have to do? They have to get outside their house and actually talk to people, and then they're happier because
you don't know they're happier. Muslims do this all the time. Oh, these people are. How do you know they're happier? What mass study? You don't have the right to. You don't have the right to tell people who's happy and who's not happy.
I just don't buy how smiley people are, I guess. So I think the reason why it comes to mind that I was telling that story is because I remember when I was in Gambia, and maybe this is not a great story, this is not evidence or something, but I was walking with my brother, who'd been living there for about a year. He was doing some sort of charity school thing, and I was like, why are people all standing outside their homes against the walls on the side of the street, basically? And my brother said
they had no choice.
Because they can't afford TV, so they end up talking to each other more.
They had no choice. They had no choice.
Yeah, but that's not exactly the point. The point is, are they happier or not? That's first of all, right? So
I don't know. They're living in a horrible place. It's not a very nice place, Gambia, to be living in. No, it's not that great of a place.
I quite enjoyed the experience. I'm in a poorer country now, with a lot of things just don't work as well, but I'm quite enjoying it. People talk to each other.
Yeah, with your benefits of a Western education, you came to the West, you got educated here, so now you can get a comfy job in Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, you're not the best example of a person born and bred in the poverty section of Jordan. You're a Westerner who got your elite college degree, and now you have a good, comfortable job in Jordan. It doesn't work like that for most people.
Sure, they're still happy even though they don't have my job. I mean, they're not desperately happy. There's lots of things wrong.
Who said they're happy? And who said they're happier? And why are they trying to come here if they're so happy?
I don't know. Okay. So I don't want to say they're not trying to come here, because not all of them can. I want to say here. Sorry, America, England, whatever, right? But they do smile a lot. They're always friendly. And they don't look like, and when I ask them about their lives and if there's any problems, they say life is good, even though they don't get much. So I can only get what they're saying, and all their smiliness and all their generosity and coming over to my house and treating me really.
Do you know that reminds me?
Social construct.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Everyone, do you know what that reminds me? You know who are also very happily and smiley and nice and gregarious and bring you to their house and do all nice things for you? Are Jehovah's Witnesses, who in the background are all fucking raping their children and are in court every day. They're not happy. Yes, I am. And they're very smiley and they're very nice, and they are miserable old harpies who do not report child molestation. They're very smiley. They're very smiley. And you know what? Also, they avoid psychiatric medication, and they think depression is actually a spiritual problem. So, if you're depressed, you need to fix yourself spiritually. And then they abandon their mentally ill children in psych wards and won't go see them because you're having a spiritual problem. A child with schizophrenia is abandoned because it's said to be a spiritual problem.
Oh wow! I wouldn't go. I don't agree with that. I do generally agree. If you're depressed, there's usually a spiritual connection. Like, people are more depressed when they're lonely, which makes sense, right? And often people, even though they have parents, they don't talk to the parents. If they've got brothers, they don't talk to their brothers. So they're probably doing something wrong.
Is depression a social construct?
Hmm.
Is
Well,
What do you
it
think?
yeah,
happening?
but also, look, the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to be depressed. I hate when people are like, "Oh, vegans have more mental illness." Of course they do, because they care. Because you know what they think about animals being hurt, and it hurts them, and they're depressed that animals are being hurt. If you don't give a fuck that animals are being hurt, you're not going to be depressed. You could watch some cow get its throat slit open, and you're just gonna be like, "Whatever," you know. But a vegan is going to be sitting there crying, and then you're going to point at it, and you're going to say, "Look how mentally ill you are. It's because you're vegan." No,
Well,
it's
it
because you're
is
a fucking.
being vegan is a mental illness if you think about it, because
No, it's not.
they haven't thought their process through, right? Okay, they want like they're clearly like I've talked to them like, what about killing grass? Doesn't grass have feelings? And they forget actually they've shown that grass and plants are alive. They just
No, but
move
we
more
don't know. They don't
slowly.
have they don't have a central nervous system. There's no evidence that they actually feel
Actually, they
anything.
scream when they're cut. So there's
No,
lots of
I know
things.
that. I know you always bring that. It's not. It's not a real. It's not.
Glad you
That's
remember what I
not.
said.
That's not a central nervous system response. That
Oh,
is not.
sorry. Their nervous system isn't like ours, so therefore they don't have feelings.
They don't
I'm
have a
sorry.
central nervous system. They don't have a
Oh,
central nervous
yeah.
system.
So just their feelings don't count because they don't have a central nervous system.
Well, if you become a fruitarian, then you don't kill plants. If you, I was
Anyway.
a fruitarian. Wait. Let's talk about fruitarianism, because I was a fruitarian for a year for that very
Can
reason.
you say
Because
that word
I
slowly? What does that even mean?
fruitarian means
Fruitarian?
you. Fruitarian. It means you only eat fruit, which doesn't kill the plant. When you pick a fruit, you don't hurt it. You don't hurt a plant by picking a fruit off of it.
Okay. But you
So
step on the bacteria.
But you can try not to. You can try your best. It's about limiting. You know, like, okay, it's like
Yeah, but you're still
vegetarians.
killing you see, you're so blasé about killing billions of bacteria. You're just walking all over
Yeah,
them.
but they don't. They don't.
Tried. Do you know what I mean? That's not good
Okay,
enough.
well, it's trying to do the best you can.
It's not
It's
good
trying
enough.
to
I
do
mean,
better. Okay,
trying
I
to-
know you're saying, oh, you stepped on a worm. That means that I can slit open a cow's throat. Like,
No, I stepped on
no.
about a billion bacteria. That's pretty
Yeah,
bad.
exactly. If that's your argument, that somebody who's trying to do their best, okay, you can't live this
because
life
they
without
haven't
killing
thought it
something.
through. They don't really
No,
understand.
they
nature.
did think it through. They did think it through, and they said, "Well, I'm going to do the best I can. I can't stop myself
No,
from
they didn't
killing
think it-
bacteria."
They didn't realize that there are different.
I just
levels
thought it
of
through for
human
you.
awareness.
I just thought it's doing the best you can. It's doing the best you can. That's it. It's doing the best you can. Every vegan knows they cannot live their life without hurting an animal or the environment. You drive your car, you hurt the environment.
Ask us a question to do with this actual topic. I mean, it's all interesting.
Give
but-
examples of constructs, of social constructs. How about that? To show
Okay, I'll give a brief answer, because everything to some extent has a layer of social construct, but it should be based on the real world, right? So like even when I'm looking at a computer screen, I'm imagining all sorts of objects in there. There's a construct in my mind. I don't know about a social construct, maybe even social, what's it called? I forget all sorts of really obvious words, right? Social media, right? Okay, that could be a sort of social construct. The whole like button is a social construct. It's like, this is how we communicate now, all that kind of stuff. So there are layers, okay, but those layers should be based on some sort of reality. So that would be my
Well, we can
answer.
change our reality. Even with genetic engineering, we can change our reality. The point is to become different than humans, to become more than humans, to become something that's not a human, and change your reality. I mean, you're about keeping it static where it is, and then with all of our limitations, living within our limitations. And, you know, we in the West, or at least me, I won't talk about the West because they're dumb, but yeah, I'm about lifting up out of the natural world.
Are you saying people in the West are dumb?
They are dumb.
What? But your argument was...
I never said the West was best. I never said that. They're letting you in. They're letting Islam in. They're letting Muslim immigrants in numbers. You think that's intelligent for a Westerner to do? No.
They're
I don't
desperate
think that's
because
intelligent.
nobody's having babies. And
Well, I don't think that's an intelligent way to deal with this. I think that we should have invented the artificial womb, or we should have given out incentives to have more children, or we should have started a state-run breeding program. Who said the government can't breed its own children?
Wait. What was the question? It was like, give examples of social constructs. Can you give an example of a social construct, Vincent?
a social construct would be, I guess maybe the man always needs to approach the woman, like always, like, and if a woman approaches a man, then that's just wrong. Like, I don't see
I think that's
women
wrong,
want.
but men have more testosterone, so it makes more sense. It's kind of
Okay,
it's
but
not
to force
based
it,
on
to
biology.
force it, I know, but to force it and to tell a woman it's inappropriate for her to approach a man that's a social construct. Because if there were no social construct and there was no shaming, women would approach men all the time. Women in the West do it all the time, where there's no shaming about it. They'll just go up to a
I
man
think
and
there's
ask.
a natural fear that's built into women that they should fear men to some extent, because men do take advantage of women. And I actually think the better system would be assisted marriages. You know what I mean by assisted marriages? Not like forced marriages, but like community kind of enable, get us over these kind of natural fears of each other where we abuse each other. So it like has a more kind of structured, ordered, intelligent way of getting people together. So I'm kind of sidetracking now, but you said something really important, and you also, just before that, you said something about you don't really like staying in line with nature. And so that's an interesting argument, because that's basically the gender argument. Like whoops, he's gone. Maybe he'll come back in a second. He hops in and out. Give him a second. Yeah. Okay, I'll carry on. So that's the gender argument, isn't it, Claire? That like the biological realities of a life don't matter. It doesn't matter. So we should be able to think whatever we want, and that's fine. But actually, that's really dangerous. That's what, anorexia and bulimia are based on, like having your thoughts that are different to reality. If you're skinny and you think you're fat and you keep dieting, that's going to be really bad for you. But there's lots of less extreme examples. Like if I want to stay healthy, I'm really acutely aware of everything I'm eating, how much sugar I'm eating. That essentially means what I'm saying there is that I really care about my biology, because I know it affects everything, my happiness, my everything. What do you think?
Sure. So we have to ask ourselves the nature and purpose of these social constructs. So so the title of the stream is gender a social construct? And then we have to ask ourselves why it was socially constructed. And the purpose is people talk about gender because they want people of these different sexes to perform their gender roles, to make their society more efficient.
Tell me the social construct that you're talking about, Claire.
Well, we're talking about gender, which is a social construct that people thought up, right? I mean, at some point in human history, somebody thought, well, men should behave like men and women should behave like women. It doesn't matter if they don't feel like men, if they're men, or vice versa. They're going to be having to perform their gender roles, and if they don't, there will be punishment and lowering of their status. Then they won't get married. And then they will be ashamed of themselves, and their parents will be ashamed of
So
them.
gender is the idea of how a biological man should behave. It doesn't necessarily mean that gender is fluid and a man can be a woman. It's just like categorizing or linking our biology to a set of healthy behaviors. Is that how you see gender? Like just categorization?
Of socially accepted and desirable behaviors. So,
Cool.
so if your parents are married, then you'll have to assume that your parents want you to marry and have children too, and then you pass on this cultural practice of marriage, which is also a social construct because it was conjured out of thin air. Traditions, conventions.
Or actually, lots of religions taught them as well. Who knows the roots? Yeah.
Yeah, so they have a purpose, and I guess we need to know why people who want us to behave in a particular way why they want us to do it, and what's in it for them, and what's in it for us, and whether
So
it's
I
good
think
or
the way you use the term social construct is very different to the way liberals use it, because you're saying a social construct is something based on reality and biology and how we actually function, okay, should mean we behave in a certain way, and they're not fluid, they're actually constant. That's how you're saying. But a liberal would say like everything's fluid and it's not based on reality, it's not based on biology, everything is in your mind. So it's very your way of looking at social construct is pretty much the opposite of the way liberals or progressives, whatever they want to call themselves, look at these same things. Do you see that, or do you agree?
yeah. So we have to decide whether certain people in their with their political affiliations have ideas that are helpful or harmful to our society. So if some permanently traumatized woman who is paranoid talks about microaggressions, she's using this concept to tell people not to stare at her or look at her in a disapproving way, and because she's sort of exaggerated, or given a name to her feeling of people not agreeing with her and looking at her in an unfriendly way with the term microaggression.
Sure, and I can understand women are a lot more sensitive. Bullying between women is through words, and bullying with men, they don't really care about words. They care about getting hit, right? So women, it just demonstrates women function differently. They're better in the home, they're not better in public and facing public scrutiny and all this kind of stuff, because they take it all personally. And sometimes it's good to take things personally, like me, because I don't take things so personally. I kind of don't connect the same way a lot of women do, right? They're just more social and stuff like that. So there's strong pluses and minuses, and the pluses and minuses suggest you should behave differently and live it, work in different sort of scenarios. Let's say public field versus private field and all that kind of stuff. Something Vincent was saying, and I'll be interested in what you think about it, Claire. Vincent was essentially saying, and you can tell me if I'm mischaracterizing what you're saying, Vincent, but you were kind of saying biology doesn't matter, and we should be able to do anything our minds can imagine. And I'm saying that's really unhealthy, and I don't think you really believe that, because, like, are you a healthy person? Like, do you watch what you eat and stuff like that, Vincent? Oh, I
He's
thought
not speaking
Vincent.
to us.
Yeah, I thought he was being really polite and quiet, but I think his microphone's gone off. Yeah, so I
He's
was going
gone
to say
again.
do you see the argument that maybe about to make, which is, I don't think Vincent really believes his claim that you can step away from nature and be detached from it and do anything you want, like making what's it called, artificial wombs. I don't
Hello?
think you.
Can you hear me
Hi.
now?
Yeah,
Yes.
No,
yeah, I
I,
can hear
I
you now.
never said that, but I told you biology
Okay,
is
go
real.
on.
I told you there's difference between men and women. I told
But you keep saying the opposite. That's my problem. You keep saying you can do anything you want. Nature is
want to find a
terrible
way
and
to
limiting.
change all that and to do it in an artificial way so that we're not constrained by nature. You don't want to be constrained by nature. Nature is cruel. Nature is unkind. Nature is messed up. You don't want to. Even Muslims don't
Why
want
do
to
you
live like
see
animals.
something? I
They
think,
don't ascribe to live like natural beings. They want a system that's outside of nature. Your God is supposed to be outside of nature. It's not, you're not supposed to
but
look
what
at
you're
nature
saying
and say,
seems
"Oh,
really
look,
unrealistic,
the animals are
because
doing it, so we should do it too."
what you're saying seems to be kind of both unrealistic and very different from your own argument that, first of all, we're attached to nature, we're affected strongly by nature, to the extent that we eat too much sugar or anything, any slight imbalance in our diet or anything we do, even if we think the wrong thoughts, okay, it affects us really badly. And then at the same time, you're saying somehow we're going to take a leap from there, okay, complete massive leap, and become completely detached from our biological realities. Like, how's that gonna? But
I never said
what?
that.
What you mean, like
Vincent,
the
you need to do
artificial
something with
womb
your
is?
audio.
Go on, Claire.
Oh, I was just saying he needs to do something with his audio. No. I mean, what? Sorry, I've forgotten what you were
I
discussing.
just feel
now.
like he's saying on one side we're connected to nature, and then he's suggesting ideas like artificial wombs, which are completely detached from how nature works.
Well,
You know,
he's
putting a
trying
machine-
to bypass marriage and gender roles.
I know
That is
that's
the
what his
most
aim
important
is,
thing
but
about
it's
Vincent.
I
Yeah,
feel like
I'm
he's
saying
contradicting
escape
himself.
nature. I'm saying escape nature.
But
I'm
you
saying that
can't
nature
because
is. Yes, you
you just
can. We
said we're
escape nature
attached
all the
to it.
time.
We're
We
connected.
have medicine that helps us escape natural consequences. We have lots of things that help us escape natural consequences now. There's lots of things you can do to escape natural consequences. We bend nature, we move rivers, we build dams, we make electricity, we do all these things that are not natural and they help us. And so I'm saying in the biological realm, we want to do this one with artificial wombs, but also we want to genetically engineer ourselves into a different
what?
kind of
I think
race.
you've made a really interesting point, which you kind of could delve into. What is natural, isn't it? Like what is in harmony with our bodies? What is in harmony with the outside, nature in general? Like we've actually destroyed a lot of nature as well. So it's not like we've done it like perfectly, So I mean, Claire's just unmuted herself. Maybe she was going to
Is
say something.
religion natural? Is belief
I
and
would
don't
say,
knowledge
know.
natural? Is the law natural?
Okay, I would say religion tells us to be social, and puts a lot of emphasis on it. So in that way, it's in line with our nature. And when we don't listen to religion, also sort of we start getting depressed. So that means it looks like
Religious
nature.
people are depressed too. Lots of Jehovah's Witnesses are depressed and they just hide it.
I don't notice that about Muslims so much.
Oh,
But
yeah, I know. Your people are perfect. There's no depressed Muslims. You're
But
right.
they do smoke a lot here, so I'm trying to be more balanced here. There's something not right, yeah. So yeah. But I would say,
well,
I mean, it's gone.
it's about escaping nature. It's just that, you want an unnatural, you want to escape nature. There's ways to escape nature without being harmful to nature or harmful to yourselves. But a lot of this has to do with reconstituting the human, what it is to be a human genetically. It's a lot of that has to do with that.
Okay, so I'm going to do another stream about human nature and its alignment with Islam because there's a verse of the Quran, and we can I'll quickly outline it. It's like there's three key elements that religions teach and Islam teaches. One is the belief in one God, another is service to humanity, and another is uniting people, right? And all these three things have been shown scientifically to be part of human nature. So, for example, the belief in God. Okay, there's an Oxford study where it's been like 1.9 million taking toddlers away from society and getting them to ask them questions about the existence of God or belief in God. And basically, cross-culturally, they believed in God. So there's a lot of there's tons of evidence. There's the Viktor Frankl stuff, psychologists who basically said we need to believe in God to be happy. So that demonstrates, happiness is a kind of a measure or a barometer of like if we're doing something we're designed to do, right? So I'd say there's evidence to believe in God. We know we're social beings, right? So that makes us happy. And when we're not social, we get depressed. So again, all religions basically get you to do that. And
well, can I just say that happiness is not necessarily the evidence that you're doing something right. Like in the Jehovah's Witnesses, they would always tell us you could be happy being drunk, you can be happy being a criminal, you can be happy being a rapist, you can be happy doing all of these things. They said that's not the point.
How do you? So I'm saying we tend to agree on a lot of things, right? So let me put it this way: do you agree that long-term happiness is a good thing? First of all,
it depends on what's making you happy. Like I said, some people are happy being criminals. Like they're happy.
No,
some
they're not really.
No, but some of them are. No, some people like being criminals. Some people like going out and beating the shit out of people. They actually like it.
I have my doubts about that.
Well, but people do. I mean, they do it over and over and over and over and over again without anyone,
you know, and people tell them not to do it and they do it anyway and they laugh and all this other kind of stuff. And some people are happy being thieves.
Sure. And then the last thing I was going to say out of the three things, this is based on the verse of the Quran about something called a fitra. You might have heard about this, right? I think, Claire, you know, basically it's a term like our true nature, right? I'm sure Vincent probably knows about it as well, right? It's quite well read in Islam to some extent. And the last thing was to be of service. And you might think, oh, but there's all these individualistic society, that can't be our true nature. But actually, the way I measure it, back to this happiness thing, if you buy, there's all sorts of experiments, like if you buy coffee for somebody else, it makes you more happy than buying it for yourself. And that kind of works for non-essential goods kind of thing, right? So it's just a quick demonstration that actually serving other people actually makes us happier. That's what we really want to do. So in short, in answering Claire's question, is religion natural? I think that's basically what you said. I think that's three evidences of all religions seem to have these three fundamentals, and it does make
useful
us happier.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say it's useful and logical.
Yeah. Okay, so let's round this up. Let's go for Vincent first. Can you do a sort of 1 minute summary of your answer to, is gender a social construct?
I think there's biological differences between men and women, but I think that there are certain kinds of constructed pressures that, you know, tell them, well, this is the way a man has to act and this is the way a woman has to act. And I think there's lots of men and women who naturally, without those pressures, would they behave differently? Yes, I think that some women would act more like men, some men would act more like women, and it would be a lot more fuzzy and blurry, these lines between gender roles. If there's no kind of construct telling people how to behave, then the gender roles become fuzzy.
Okay, thank you for doing that so succinctly in 1 minute. Claire, have a go.
Gender is a social construct, because to talk about gender rather than sex is a way of talking about gender roles. Gender roles are necessary for people looking for a spouse to perform in order to attract a spouse. And that is the purpose of marriage and gender as social constructs.
Cool, right. So I think essentially the argument is that we can imagine ourselves to be anything. It doesn't matter how our biology, our bodies are. It doesn't matter about reality at all. And that's obviously a really dangerous thing to do. And it's a very dangerous idea that we've accepted from a really dangerous man, as I mentioned before, John Money, who was abusive, and he came up with this idea so that he could do, you know, sex organ mutilation operations and things like that. It's clearly nonsensical, dangerous idea that you can do anything you want. We don't really believe that in our hearts of hearts. That's why when we're dieting or taking care of our health, we're very careful about having perfect balance in what we eat and what we think and all this kind of stuff. Never mind chopping bits of our bodies off in a permanent feature, or taking strong drugs that I never even, you know, I avoid taking any pharmaceuticals. I don't trust them at all. So as much as I can. So it's just so dangerous to think that we can behave at odds with our own biology. We should be in our modern world where we're so estranged from our bodies and what we really need. We need to do the opposite and get back in touch with how we feel, and not just how we feel, but be more in tune with our bodies and nature and things like that. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we're going to have a lot more of Vincent now, because I'm going to try to do my streams on the weekdays. But it was really interesting to have both you, Claire, and Vincent on. And thanks everybody in the chat, knows, and whoever. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
See you at the next
Thanks for
whipping.
having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.